That's what I missed last time.
The Mr. Carpenter.
Last time I saw these little pause things, and on the Easy Talks, that means it's recording. But on this, it means you're stopping the screen share. All right, just a minute. Andy, was it polio you were talking about?
Yes.
I think I told you last week, last yesterday, that that would be as opposed to yesterday before last. Anyway, that no one had seen anything like this since 1918 flu, and I stand corrected. My mother-in-law mentioned to my wife that this reminds her of the polio scare in maybe the late 1940s, early 1950s. But since I was born in 1958, that's still before my time and before most of our times. All of you for sure, unless your parents are listening in, and then probably before them too. All right, so anyway, yesterday we started looking at these different systems, kingdoms, and it gave you a brief description of what's in each. Pointed out to you that the classification system organizes things so that we can study more efficiently by putting similar things in similar groups and not having to learn every single plant or animal individually. Well, the kingdoms. Kingdom Protista. Now, Kingdom Protista
All right, he
are
finally got
the
it going.
single-celled organisms.
Let me transfer.
Not bacteria. Bacteria get their own group.
Edit.
Bacteria are incredibly tiny. Bacteria are not easily seen with a light microscope. They take some special preparation.
We don't even
the
have to
highest
take notes.
magnification a light microscope has.
Yeah.
Kingdom Protista, the members of this kingdom are pretty easily seen with a regular microscope. Some of them can be seen with a hand lens, just a magnifying glass. Now, some of the organisms in this kingdom are plant-like. In other words, they are sessile. I used to make a joke about a Detroit Tiger first baseman, but that was probably too long ago for any of you to remember. They are sessile, which means they can't move themselves. Plants are sessile. Or some of them are motile, meaning they can, M-O-T-I-L-E, motile, except we don't really say it like that, meaning that they can move themselves like animals. So that's where the plant and animal-like characteristic come in. Some of them are heterotrophic, meaning they eat things like animals do. And some of them are autotrophic, meaning that they can get their food from light by photosynthesis like plants do. Or, and here is, at least from a biological sense, the amazing thing, some of them can do both. Some of them are both photosynthetic and heterotrophic. If it's sunny, they can make their own food. It'd be kind of like if you, on a bright day, could sunbathe and turn bright green and not have to eat that day. There's an interesting thought, the bright green part. Or you could eat when you couldn't reach the sun. And again, from a biological point of view, up until these organisms were discovered, that was considered to be a clean division, either plant or animal, heterotrophic or autotrophic. In fact, that's why they made this kingdom, because of this group that had characteristics of both plants and animals. These things are single-celled or occasionally simple colonies. Now, this word colony means that they are in groups of cells, but they don't have any actual tissues or organs. But if you don't have tissues, you can't have organs. Means that they're just clumps of cells that live together, and they don't necessarily mean each other. You can break them up and they still live. The cells don't have hardly any difference between them. There's almost no division of labor. Like these are the cells that digest something, and those are the cells that I don't know, that hear something, except they're little tiny things they wouldn't hear. But there's no division of labor. So that is that's Kingdom Protista. And I see that my little, well, I don't know for you folks. I have a console that drops down from the top, and on my screen it's blocking Kingdom Protista. It may not show up on your screen. I'm not sure. It's a Protista. Should it be blocked on your screen? Kingdom Fungi, or fungi, or fungi, or however you want to say it. Oh, look, there's a fungus and there's another one. That's how you get around it if you're not sure how to say it. These are also sessile. For a long, long time, the fungi were considered to be a kind of plant because they're sessile. They don't, get up and walk away and plop themselves someplace else. The mushroom doesn't run when you try to pick it or whatever. Having said that, here's a scary thought. There is a kind of fungus called, this sounds terrible, called slime mold. It can get up to a foot or so across, and it can crawl. It can literally, like one enormous amoeba, slowly crawl across the ground wherever it lives. Way back when I was in college, I had a so I just told you I was born in 1958, so I was in college a long time ago, and I had a 1972 Dodge Polaris, and it had a leak in the air conditioner, not in the Freon, but the condensate, the water condensate would drip onto the carpet underneath the dashboard. And one day I noticed that there was this slimy thing on the carpet, and I tried to clean it off, and it came back, and I tried to clean it off, and it came back. And then all of a sudden one day I noticed it wasn't slime anymore. And I noticed that where it had been, there was a whole bunch of things that looked like, I don't know, the best I can think is miniature black trees, maybe 1/8 of an inch tall. And then I realized it was a slime mold that had lived there, and then it had fruited. It had made its mushrooms, if you will. Thankfully, it didn't crawl across the carpet and wrap itself around my leg while I was driving. It would be a great science fiction show, this enormous slime mold that ate you in your sleep. But most of them are sessile. Most things in Kingdom Fungi are sessile. They can't move. They just sit where they are. Okay, now here's another cool thing, or gross, however you want to look at it. And I'm telling you, you're going to say, yeah, so what? Well, I'll tell you so what in a minute. They're heterotrophic. In other words, they eat like animals, except they don't eat like animals. They have external digestion. Now, the thing about external digestion means they don't eat their food and then digest it. They digest their food and then they absorb it. If we had external digestion, and you can thank the Lord that we don't, if we had external digestion, instead of dinner tables, we would have dinner. Yeah, can you guys hold your chats for later, please? Instead of dinner tables, we would have, I don't know, dinner tubs. And instead of eating our food at supper time or lunch or whatever, we would throw our food in this tub, take our clothes off and soak in it for a while, digest it and then absorb it. Get up, rinse off, put our clothes on and go back about our business. So again, you can thank the Lord that we don't have external digestion. So anyway, this is one of the things that made fungi different from plants. This is another thing that makes fungi different from plants. They have cell walls made of chitin. It's pronounced K, not ch, like you would think. Almost everyone, when they see it, says chitin, but it's chitin. Chitin is a complex carbohydrate similar to cellulose, but different from cellulose. It is the thing that makes up the exoskeleton of insects. Plants have cell walls, and I think we covered this someplace earlier. I think when we were talking about cells, we mentioned cell walls. Plants have cell walls made of cellulose, and fungi have cell walls made of chitin. Now, this is also different from plants. Fungi are single-celled in some cases, like yeast. Yeast is a fungus. Up to complex colonies made of a kind of cluster, a kind of tissue called hyphae, not to be confused with punctuation. You know, you can't have a hypheated word. Again, I wait for the moans and there are none because I can't hear you. If you see a mushroom is a very dense wad of hyphae. If you see the actual fungus, when you see a mushroom, that is not the fungus per se. When you see a mushroom, the fungus per se, the fungus itself, the actual fungus, is living in the ground underneath the mushroom. So a mushroom is to a fungus like an apple is to the tree. Now, in the case of apple trees, you know, we can see the whole tree except for the roots, but we can see enough of it to know it's there. In fungus, you don't see the rest of it. It actually turns out that the largest living things on Earth are fungi. And if I remember, one of them is actually in Michigan, if I remember right. I think it was Lake Superior State University was trying to plant some trees in a field, and the trees kept dying, and they couldn't figure out why, and they planted some more and they died, and they planted some more and they died, and so they finally ended up doing a little research and found that there was this fungi that, based on genetic testing, was several acres large. You can see pictures of it online if you look it up. And I should have thought to have pictures of this stuff for you, but in the other software, I could switch back and forth between screens. But with Zoom, apparently I'm stuck on this one screen until I change it, so I can't jump back and forth to a browser and show you pictures. I'll have to put them in the PowerPoint for later. Next time, you know, live and learn. All right, let's see. Next kingdom is Plantae. Okay. Now we get complicated. Plants are sessile. No news to you, other than in whatever that movie was that everybody except me watched. The trees don't pull their roots out of the ground and go running across the forest carrying the good guys in their limbs. So you say, how do I know that if I didn't watch it? My sons watched it countless times, and I happen to walk through the room once in a while. They are sessile. They don't move. They are autotrophic with photosynthesis. In other words, again, you know this, they make their own food from the light. There are a few exceptions, and here's another place I should have thought to get some pictures for you. There are a few exceptions. There is a plant called Indian pipe that is heterotrophic. It has very tiny leaves on its stem. They're very tiny because they're non-functional. It has a little simple flower at the top, and it's all ghost white because they are because they're heterotrophic. They do not have any photosynthesis. They don't have any chlorophyll. They do not do photosynthesis. They're actually kind of cool, but eerie looking all at the same time. And sorry, I didn't think to get pictures. You should look them up online when we're done. So plants have cell walls made of cellulose, not to be confused with cellulite. That's just globby, nasty stuff that nobody wants. Cellulose is actually what the fiber in food is. So if we're on a high fiber diet, we're on a high cellulose diet. All plant products have fiber in them unless they have been purified to a single substance. So for instance, white flour does not have any fiber in it, because all of the starch has been purified out. The cellulose, the fiber, and everything else has been removed. Now, if you ate the wheat before it was turned into fiber, or if you ate the wheat like stone ground and then not purified, then it would have fiber. Mashed potatoes have fiber. Sugar does not, because in the case of sugar, only the sugar has been extracted from the cane or beet, and all of the rest has been used for something else. I'm trying to think what that brown stuff is. Molasses. Molasses is some of what's left over from processing the sugar, but it still doesn't have the fiber in it. I don't know what they do with the fiber. I would suppose that they might feed it to animals. I'm not sure. It's a good question. I might have to look that up. Plants have a couple special organelles. They have chloroplasts, which, if you remember from when we talked about cells, are a kind of plastid. And they have a central vacuole. Hopefully you remember that from when we talked about cells. Plants do have tissues and organs. Yes, Gabe.
May I use the bathroom? Oh, frick. Where did my bathroom pass go? Shoot.
Oh,
gotta
just a
find it real
minute.
quick.
I actually have my volume turned off, so I think you're asking something, but I have no. All right, say it again, Gabe. Better be good.
May I use the restroom, Mr. Carpenter?
Got your potty card?
No, I forgot it. Hold up. Let me find it real quick, actually. All right, I'll be right back, though.
Oh, let's see. Tissues and organs. Plants have tissues and organs. Not organs like hearts, lungs, liver, but organs like leaves, flowers, stems, roots. Now, this last characteristic down here at the bottom, is kind of interesting and kind of freaky weird all at the same time. Plants have two forms: an asexual version, a reproducing version, and a sexually reproducing version. Now, sexual means that there are two parents, although in plants, sometimes the same plant acts as a male and a female. But sexual reproduction means that there are two parents and the offspring are genetically different from either parent. Asexual means that there is only one parent and the resulting offspring is identical to the one parent. So basically, in asexual reproduction, the offspring is a clone of the parent. So plants have these two forms, and they alternate back and forth every generation. Now, you probably have never seen these two forms in a plant. If you have seen it, it would have probably been a fern at the store, not a fern in the wild. Sometimes when you buy a small fern at a store, or just look at it in the pot and don't buy it, you will see at the base of a fern a little small leaf-like thing laying on the ground. That is the sexual reproducing form, and the fern is the asexual reproducing form. The other place you might have seen alternation of generations is in moss. Now, be careful here. A lot of people confuse lichens, which is the stuff that grows on the side of the trees, on the north side, so you can find your way if you're lost and your cell phone won't work and whatever else. I'm not talking about lichens. I'm talking about moss. There's carpets of green, fluffy stuff, furry stuff that grow on the ground. Sometimes on top of those little green carpets, you will see these little brownish, yellowish, tannish things growing out of the top of the what am I talking about? Moss. And those two things, the green leafy shoot and the brownish, tannish thing growing off the top, are literally two different plants. The green leafy shoot is the gametophyte. It's the sexually reproducing plant. And the brownish, tannish thing growing on top is the sporophyte. It is the asexual reproducing plant. And you say, well, they're growing one off the other. Why are they two plants? They're two plants because they're genetically different from each other. So the tan thing on top is actually being a parasite on its parent. Some of your parents are feeling that way right now. Just kidding, just kidding. Oh, let's see. So they switch back and forth every other generation. If people were like this, and okay, this is a pretty lame illustration, but this doesn't happen in any organism that we're familiar with or that we could easily see at least. And so this is pretty lame, but here you go. Suppose that people did alternation of generations. If people did alternation of generations, maybe, a man and a woman would, a boy and a girl, whatever, grow up and get married, and they would have babies, except the babies wouldn't look like baby people. Maybe the babies would look like enormous sponges. And then those sponges would grow up, however a sponge grows up, I don't know, I told you it was lame. And the sponge would make a bunch of spores, and the spores would, boom, pop into people again. So, oh, look at isn't that so cute, my precious baby sponge? And then next generation, we'd be back to people. Okay, as I said, pretty lame, but it's the best I can come up with. And it is freaky weird, and plants do it. All right, let's see. What else? Animals. Animals are modal, we can move. And question comes up, are people animals? And the answer is yes and no. People are immortal spirits. While we're here on Earth, Paul referred to it as a tent. We live in an animal body while we're here on Earth, but the animal body is not the real us. By the way, this is okay, excuse me while I go to preaching for a minute here. And by the way, if we would learn to recognize the fact that our physical appearance is not the real us, that we may, in our opinion, look ugly, but we can be beautiful in the way we act and treat people. If we could recognize that we may not be as smart as we want, but that's not the real us, that the real us can be as worthwhile as anybody else, it would go a long way with helping us with our self-esteem issues and so on. Anyway, sorry, I'll go back to teaching now. So they're modal, we can move. All animals are heterotrophic. There are no animals, there's not a single animal that can photosynthesize. We have no cell walls, cell membrane, but no cell walls. And we have tissues and organs. Oh, this is timely. So there is this group of organisms that doesn't fit in any of the kingdoms because, I guess I'm getting a little ahead of myself, because they are not considered living things. And they're not considered living things because they aren't made of cells. And according to the cell theory, all living things are made of cells. So, okay, I'm probably going to go over most of your heads now. It's not something you need to know, but for those of you who get it and care, you might find this worth thinking about. So we said when Leeuwenhoek, I think I might have that wrong. When the first guy invented the microscope, he looked at cork, which is the bark of a tree. And he said, whoa, this is made of little compartments, little cells. That's where the name came from. And then as they got better and better at making microscopes and looking at things, they said, look at this, all plants are made of cells. But since animals don't have cell walls, they couldn't tell right away if all animals were made of cells. But then they got better microscopes and they found where they could see the membranes, and they said, oh, look, all animals are made of cells. And then they found other stuff and they said, everything else is made of cells. And so ultimately they said, all living things are made of cells. And then they discovered, not microscopes, that's stupid. Then they discovered viruses and they said, whoa, these don't have cells. So they must not be living things. But what they just did was they clouded their definition of viruses by something they had decided was true before they discovered viruses. So anyway, like I said, you don't have to know that, but it may be worth thinking about for those of you who are who like thinking about biology things. Ava, your speaker's making, your mic's making some kind of a clicking, so if you could turn that off, please. Let's see. So what are viruses? Viruses are tiny pieces of DNA, or sometimes RNA. No cytoplasm, no organelles, no membrane, just a little bit of DNA or RNA with a protein coat. So how can they cause so much problem? They enter the cell and take over the cell's internal machinery, and they force the cell to, instead of making cell parts for the cell, to make virus parts for the virus. And then once the cell has made all the virus parts it can, it, for lack of a better word, explodes. But when something as small as a cell explodes, you can't really feel the bang. And releases all those new viruses, and each of those new viruses tries to find another cell. And if you can imagine, you start with one virus with one cell, and maybe that releases, I don't know, 50 viruses. And so that infects 50 cells instead of one, and each of those release 50. So that infects 250 cells. And you can see that this number gets bigger exponentially, very, very quickly. They're made of two things: tiny pieces of DNA and RNA and a protein covering. I think I already mentioned that. Most viruses are specific to a species, some even to a tissue. So we've talked about specificity. They can only do or attack one thing. So for example, pigs can get the flu and humans can get the flu, but it's two different flus. Birds can get the flu, but it's two different flus. If you, okay, I know this sounds disturbing. If you live with pigs, and I don't mean actually, you know, sleep in the same, have them in the house with you, although I suppose there are some people who have some pet pot-bellied pigs in their house. But if you live on a pig farm and are around the pigs a lot, and one of the pigs gets the pig flu, or especially if several of them catch the pig flu, you could catch the pig flu from the pig. But the swine flu does not easily transmit from human to human. It transmits easy from pig to pig. It transmits with difficulty from pig to human, and it almost doesn't transfer at all from human to human. Now, what happens is occasionally, if somebody is sick with, let's say, the swine flu and the human flu at the same time, and you have those two viruses in the same cells, sometimes they can recombine with each other. So you start out with a pig virus and a human virus, and you end up with a pig/human virus that can transmit easily from human to human. And then you've got a problem, because that's a brand new virus that no one has ever had before, and everyone is immune to it. So someone in AP Biology told me that they read someplace, and I cannot vouch for the authenticity of this, that they think that this COVID-19 current thing we're dealing with started, well, we know it started in China, with someone who, and apparently, yes, they eat bats in China, someone who was selling bats at a market and caught the bat coronavirus, and it rearranged to combine with a human coronavirus to make a brand new bat/coronavirus that passed easily, too easily, from person to person. Again, I can't vouch for the truth of that, and there may be, that was, oh, I don't know, a week ago, and the news is coming out so fast. What day is this? Thursday? Can you believe that a week ago today we were just thinking, maybe they'll cancel schools, and now here we are in this mess. Well, anyway. Yes, Gabe.
So essentially, we're all gonna die.
Yes, but not from the virus.
Wait.
It is appointed after man. It is, no. I got that mixed up. It is appointed unto man to die, and after that, the judgment, says the Bible. Yes, we're all going to die. And maybe about some tiny fraction of a percent of the human population is going to die of this coronavirus. For the most part, it's not all that deadly. The problem is that everybody gets it. Potentially, if we didn't isolate, everybody could get it almost at the same time. And then there wouldn't be enough doctors and hospitals and nurses and whatever else to deal with everybody all at once. So I think the plan is to try and spread it out as long as possible. Now, I'm just speculating at this point. Okay, again, I don't know this for sure. I'm just speculating. Most coronaviruses are seasonal. They tend to be worse at some times of year and less bad at other times of year. And it may be that as we get into summer, the coronavirus subsides until next year. And then hopefully the plan is, I think, by next year to have a vaccine so that everybody in the world doesn't have to catch it. But no, we're not all going to die from it. In fact, almost none of us are going to die from it. However, that's not all that comforting if you or someone close to you happens to be one of the few that does. All right, I think that this is a good place to stop. We'll talk about bacteria tomorrow. And you will notice that when I was going through the kingdoms, I did not say anything specifically. Okay, there I said 6 kingdoms. And then I said Kingdom Protista. So I skipped saying anything extra about Kingdom Monera and Kingdom Arche. That's because all I need you to know about them is what they are: bacteria and blue-green algae for Monera, and the extreme bacteria, the extremophiles, for Kingdom Arche. Tomorrow, we will start to talk about bacteria, what they do, a few important things about them. And I have posted the, postponed the quizzes so they don't start until Monday, because there's just too many bugs in this still. We're not quite ready to take that step yet. But today's a lot smoother than yesterday, so things are looking good. Yes, John?
When does the bell ring, Mr. Carpenter?
Well,
Like,
the
are
bell-
we almost done?
Yes. That's why a minute ago I said this is a good place to stop right here. I'm trying to keep these in the 30 to 45 minute range. And we got a little bit late start because of not being able, because of me logging on and being the only one. I don't know why that was, but
Got it. Thank you. I just have to go do something, so I appreciate that.
yep, that's fine. You can leave. I'm about ready to log off if we don't have anything to, if we don't have any questions. The quizzes will be on the LMS site, unless that doesn't work well. Haven't tried it yet. You will answer them online. You will be able to use your cards or book. You will not, please, be needing to ask each other answers. I would say, I understand that you're that you have to be on your honor on this, but please do as I ask. Trey?
Can cows get the coronavirus?
Well, the cows can get a coronavirus, but it's not the same coronavirus that's going around right now. Coronavirus is a family of viruses. I don't know how many there are, 20 or 50 of them. And COVID-19 doesn't affect cows. As far as I have heard so far, COVID-19 doesn't affect anything that's not human. I got a message that there were 2 hands raised, but it only told me who one was. Somebody else have a question?
Yeah. Are we allowed to use cram for like quizzes?
Yeah, those are basically just your cards, and I told you didn't have to take cards. So yes, you can use cram.
All right.
All right, anything else?
Have a good day, Mr. Carpenter.
Thank you. The rest of you have a good day also, and we'll, quote unquote, see you tomorrow. Bye.
Bye.
Bye,
Bye, Miss-
boys and girls.
Bye.